Building a return on investment calculator in 30 minutes for free with Squirrel. Well, before we start, I just want to say actually it's a bit more than just return on investment calculators, because there are so many sales and marketing sort of things that you can do with Squirrel. So obviously return on investment and establishing a return on investment with your customers and prospects is definitely something you can do, but also total cost of ownership. And so proving total cost of ownership of a system which is related to but different from return on investment, also a good candidate for this, as are value calculators in general. So just the idea of explaining the value of your services or product to a prospect or customer, or indeed other sorts of value. It doesn't have to be specific to services. There's a lot of ways that you can use Squirrel in order to articulate value to people in different ways. And we'll actually see some real world examples of this as we go through the presentation a bit later. You can also use them for pricing calculators, so helping people understand what it's going to cost to buy various components of a system, or going one past that into configuration calculators, so how you might want to configure a system or configure a project or something like that, to be able for people to get an idea of what something's going to cost them as well as the return they're going to get on it. So pretty much whatever you're doing in sales and marketing or pre-sales, or if you own your own business, or anyone, for any reason you want to articulate value to people, Squirrel can add a huge amount. And the reason for that is that normally, and I think as most people on the call who are in this situation will already have a spreadsheet that does this or some of this. But there are a number of problems with spreadsheets. The first problem is they're quite hard to share. You send them out, you need to update them, you have to send them out again. It's hard to narrow down what they're showing to just the really high level numbers. You often have to share too much detail. They're visually very limited. Yes, you've got charts, but sort of some of that you'll see in Squirrel, the number of components you have to be able to bring your spreadsheet logic to life and really communicate the value is remarkable. It also, spreadsheets, it's really hard to tie them down so that people can't see your intellectual property, the numbers underneath this. That may be sort of proprietary algorithms you don't want people to see, or it just may be areas of the calculation which is just going to confuse matters if people see it. And again, Squirrel allows you very much to hide those. And overall, they're really just not that engaging. They're not a great way of getting this value across. Whereas on the other hand, building interactive sales and marketing tools with Squirrel addresses all these problems, but also really articulates the value. It really allows people to dig in and understand the value of what you're offering to them, and it deepens understanding of the product or service that you're offering, which helps the customer buying journey. It also, we've seen it foster collaboration where a sales executive and a prospect will use the tool together to go through and explore different possibilities, and sort of that can really sort of deepen the pre-sales relationship between the two organizations. It can open a raft of options for people to understand the products or services you're offering more, so there's an educational value to it as well. And ultimately, as I said, about one of the big downsides of spreadsheets is that they don't really engage. But I hope you'll see by the end of the day that with Squirrel projects really do engage. They're interactive, they're visual, they're explanatory, and so they really do offer a medium to engage people, whether that's in a presentation or on your website or just sent through a link through email. There's a great range that you can do with them. So what are we going to look at today? We're going to three simple things. First of all, I'm going to look at this thing that we're going to be building today, this ROI calculator in 30 minutes. I'll show you the finished example, walk through a little, show what it does. Then we'll look at Squirrel inside the Squirrel designer itself and show you how it's done. And then we'll have a quick look at some real world examples, so some of our customer and partner examples of what people have done, which will give you an idea of the breadth of possibilities and also the breadth of sort of visual designs you can use, because Squirrel really doesn't constrain you at all to what you can show and how you can show it. So let's start with today's example, which is this one here. So this is one that I have created from a spreadsheet I found online. I'll talk you through that in a minute, but it's about a fictitious company called MyMark, and they offer marketing services. And this area down here to the left of the plus signs is just a basic ROI calculator for a typical campaign, sending out a number of items, what the cost of the campaign is, what the response rate and conversion rate is. And as you move the slider, you can see as you move the sliders, you get a different ROI. If you get less revenue, you get less like that. And so this we'll build this piece first, this bit of just doing an ROI on a campaign, which in itself may be quite useful. But then what we also add in here is the ability to say, well, if I'm talking to you about my services from MyMark, then I can maybe add in, well, if what happens if you to your ROI if I use the easy send service? Well, it boosts the number of items that I send. It does increase my cost. Oh, and there that for because of that, that's we've got the return has gone negative. But if I add in the better copy, which is the copywriting service, then that takes my return up a bit more. And if I do direct follow-up, well, direct follow-up isn't so applicable in this case. And not just adding those in, but I can pop up here and say, well, actually, maybe I want to offer the customer a discount to make it more palatable. We can change the sort of the criteria, the parameters of the various the impact of the various services. So I really quite a fully functional ROI calculator to understand how taking these services is going to impact on a particular campaign. As I say, you can see how this would allow a salesperson to talk somebody through the services, say, well, you want this or you wouldn't want this, but maybe if you add that, you can get it. You could see how you could send this to a customer, they could do it themselves, or you could embed it in your website for a bit of self-service and maybe have a button which records what they've chosen and then sends an email for further follow-up, so you know what they've done. So when you get back to them, you can say, well, I could see you were looking at our better copy service and things like that. So a lot of possibilities here, all facilitated by this elevation of what is at its heart, in this case, an Excel spreadsheet model, which is all it is. It's just Excel and Squirrel to allow you to do things like this. And so to show you how easy that is to do, I'm going to start, as I said, with a calculator. It was just a marketing ROI for a marketing campaign calculator that I found on this. I just searched for it. If I have no affiliation or anything to do with this site, but they have a lot of great calculators and templates. I just wanted something that was online and I could take in its current form to show that I'm sort of not creating this specifically for Squirrel. It's just an online ROI calculator that I can use to as the basis of my model. And so if we bring it into, this is it in Excel, very straightforward, got a number of items, costs, which gives me a cost per item. I've got a response rate, which gives me responses, conversion rate, which gives me conversions, revenue per conversion, which calculates an ROI. So obviously I can change this. If I put out 7,000 of these, it changes my ROI, but maybe that cost me more. That's 2,500 maybe. So you can see how it's, oh no, sorry, 25,000 is a bit high. So you can see how this is working inside Excel. But as I say, the issue with this is, yes, sharing it's a bit of an issue. It's not that visually appealing. It's got lots of detail in here, which I need for the calculations, but maybe not the best thing to show, just this distracting detail. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this into Squirrel and turn it into a Squirrel project. Will be the basis, as you will see, for the project that you just saw. So if I open up Squirrel here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that spreadsheet. So I just go and import, and I'm going to take, that's exactly the one I just opened in Excel, and it brings it in with all the logic. So I now have it inside Squirrel so that I can use it as the basis of my Squirrel project. First thing I'm going to do is actually very straightforward. I'm just going to add a title in here, and the title is going to be something about calculators. A calculator, maybe make that bigger, and maybe make it bold. So there, I've misspelled it or mistyped it rather, but that's not a problem because I'm actually usually don't type in the text, because the type is much better to take the text from the spreadsheet. And the big thing about Squirrel is it allows you to connect this user interface that you're creating inside the designer to the spreadsheet through this button here. So if I click on this button, it says which cell do you want to bind that to. I can click any of them. I'm going to click the marketing ROI calculator, so that gives me that title up there. That's just putting a piece of text on a spreadsheet on there. It's not that exciting. But the next thing I can do is actually much more important. So what I can come in here is say I'm going to have a slider which is going to control some of these variables in the spreadsheet. And this first one is going to control the value of the number of items. So I can change the number of items. And that's it's currently at 6,000. I'm going to allow that to go up to 20,000. I'm going to do that in 100 steps, so it's easy to run. There's lots of sort of styling capability here So I can take my max and min values and say that I want to make them slightly smaller so they're not in the way to such an extent. Then I can take this. So now if I take this, having just done that, what we'll see if we run this in test mode, then we'll see that as I move this, you'll see this number here is changing. So it's already starting to update the spreadsheet model, and you can see all the following calculations change right the way down to, as I move that, I get my return on investment changing inside the spreadsheet. As you said, this spreadsheet isn't going to be present for the end user. All the end user is going to see is something like this. Now, for them at this moment in time, obviously there's nothing interesting going on because they've got no outputs on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an output to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to put this down here, and I'm going to say that's going to be just a title for the return on investment. Maybe spread that out a bit. I'm going to make it bold. And I might want to color it. Now, I could color it by just going here and picking a color, but actually we want consistent colors through it, or we might have some sort of color that is a corporate standard. In this case, the corporate for MyMark is in red as the color. So if I now bind that to this cell here, the text color to Indian red, then I get a nice sort of red color there. And I can use that throughout my model now. So I can come in here and say, well, actually, I want my selected range to also be that same Indian red, maybe my handle as well. You can see that everything here I can customize. So now I've got that sort of take off that border. So it's now customized here. So I've got this all the same color. And what I'm going to do is just add another text label here, which is going to be the ROI itself. And so this time I'm going to bind this into that ROI, format it as a percentage, maybe make it so 1 decimal place, make that much bigger because it's the important number on here, make it bold. And again, I'm going to bind it to that same color there. So I've got this. Now, one thing you can do with this is to make it stand out is maybe put it on a background. So I'm just going to put a rectangle over that with fill on it, maybe as a sort of light gray background. It's obviously, I need to push that to the back so they can see everything out. So send that to the back. So there I've got my little, very much similar, well, identical to the thing that you saw on the original project that we saw. So now if I preview this, then we see that we get the input and the output. So as I change the number of mail items I'm sending, I get a different return on investment, all calculated by the underlying spreadsheet. Now, obviously, in order to make this sensible to the user, I'm going to have to add in some more of these. So let's take the campaign costs. We don't want that to be a slider. Maybe we want to be that to be a value input. So we just can type it in or use the up down arrows. I'll do that 100 at a time. It's going to be the cost, the campaign cost there. I will make the value a bit bigger like that. So it's there. So now we've got the campaign costs. I'm going to make that currency, US dollars and 1,000 separators. So that's that there. So now I've got a situation where I can change the number of things we're sending out, or I can change the cost of the campaign. So we're starting to get a more inputs that we can change to get a feel for the outputs depending on these various parameters. It's not clear what that is. So again, I've size there, put it to the side and say that that's going to be the number of mail items sent. So we could do that, and then maybe just duplicate that down here and bind that into campaign costs. So you see we're starting to build this up, that one that you saw, the one that you saw earlier. And in fact, what I'm going to do now, because we're limited on time today, is to open up the initial ROI calculator here. So I won't save what I've done. So I'll bring in this, and literally all I've done is added some more sliders, some more text, and another value input. There's nothing more gone on there. There's nothing gone into this that isn't just a repetition of things you've done before, you've seen before in the last 5 minutes. And if I sat down with this, creating this from here would be like 5 minutes effort. So now I've got a fairly fully fledged sort of ROI calculator for an internal marketing campaign. And I can then go and publish this. So I can publish this up to the Squirrel cloud. My first marketing calculator. I'll publish that up, and that's now available. I can send that out on a link. I can embed it in a website, or I can embed it in a PowerPoint. So for example, this is still quite something you might use internally. So I can come into here, say I want to share it, copy my PowerPoint ID, And if I come back to my presentation here, pop out of the, there, I've got a slide in here. So I'm just going to insert it in my presentation so I can get the Squirrel add-on. I can put my link in there that I've just clipped out of Squirrel. So something that we've literally just built in Squirrel, we can now have active inside PowerPoint. So I could maybe make a case for my marketing campaign. Allows me to sort of here, if I go Shift F5 and so now you see I can do all of the things that I saw there, up the cost, all inside PowerPoint. I can do all of that, and maybe it's what that allows me not only to present my my campaign and why it's a good thing to do, but if people ask, well, actually, what happens if we only make $70 per conversion, then we can do that as well. So it's interactive, and so even in internal context, when I'm trying to justify a campaign, it can be really valuable. But that's not the objective of today's webinar. What we're looking at is externally facing ROI style calculators. And so what we're going to do here is take this and do the next step, which is to move it on a little into the a calculator that we can use externally to articulate the value of the service, the MyMark marketing services. And to do that, what I've done is I've taken this spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet is the original, which is exactly the same up to there. And I've added in some details about the MyMark services. So it's like the price of each of the services, the expected increase in performance that I get from taking them. If this is a 0, then you'll see when these are all 0, I've got none of the services, so there's no MyMark return. But if I put a 1 in there, that's added in the easy send service. I can see I've got a return of 1,000. Add in that, I get that. So it's a very standard, very straightforward Excel model that adds in MyMark services on top. So with the MyMark services, this is what you get, and these are the differences between the two. So we can start to articulate the value, because these is all the value of the MyMark services. So if I come back to my Squirrel project, then because it's got the same sort of structure, I can just import that second spreadsheet, and I'm going to that's the one here, the one I have updated. So I bring this in, and because it's got the same structure in the cells that it had before, it still does exactly everything that it did before. I mean, it's no different, but it's now got the possibility to open up into the MyMark services. So what I'm going to do is give myself a little more room. Maybe make it 800 wide, actually 850 wide, and 750 long. And I'm going to take all of these and move them down a bit, because it's externally facing. So now I don't want a title on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in an image, my logo in here. So I get my MyMark services logo, put that in there. And so now we've got a nice sort of branded capability there. But now what I want to do is I want to be able to exercise the model that I've got here and turn on the various services. And we're going to turn those on using a toggle switch. So the toggle switch can push data, just like the slider pushes a number as you move it into a cell. The toggle switch can put an on or off value, and the on value here is going to be 1, the off value is 0, and that's just going to put it into that cell there. And so we know what we're doing. I'm going to take a piece of text here, again, make it slightly smaller, make it 12, align it to the, actually maybe 13, align it to the right, and then I will bind that into this title here. So this is my easy send, turning my easy send on and off. Now what we'll see is if I come in again in test mode to see what's happening in the underlying spreadsheet, I can say to debug, and now I turn it on, and we see we get the increases and all the change in ROI. But because I'm not wired those up yet, because this is just the vanilla case without the easy send services, it's just sitting as it was. So what I need to do is I need to add a little more here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little extra piece of text on here. Make that bold like that. And so I'm now just going to add in the MyMark services. So this is the number of items. So if I click on here, I'm going to take the number of items that I increase with my MyMark. So that's going to be there. I'm going to make it a number and put in 1,000 separate. So now what you can see is if I come in here and preview, then when I click this, it shows me when I do easy send, it shows me what the difference is with easy send. I'm also going to have some, let me just that. There's also going to be obviously some extra costs involved in that. So again, I can copy this down. I'm just going to say that is going to be equal to, where's the cost? campaign costs, which are just updated depending on what I've chosen there. I might make those currency, and so yes, like that. Maybe make it dollars. Now, if I do that, then I get the easy send. So this is the difference the easy send is making. Obviously, the one that we're really interested in is in the ROI at the bottom. So if I take these and again copy and paste them and move the new ones down here, so I can get a feel for the increase in ROI. To come down here, so that's the increase in ROI from easy send. And what I might also want to do is just copy and paste this one. So rather than have the, make this a little smaller over here, because we're going to bind this into the return that MyMark are providing. So then if I make this smaller, so we've got a, so there we've got the MyMark return, and I have to take this 50 and bind it into the total return there, and I will make that again a currency with US dollars. So now what you can see as I do this, when I add in that, I start to see what the yes, that is right, because it turns out that it's still a 50% return when I add the easy send, but I'm making extra because I'm investing extra. But if we add in, if I was to take this and add that, so now we add in the better copy service here, that in there. So now what we see, we do this, then we see that if we do both of those, we start to make extra value in there as well. So everything is updating. So that was and again, with a little extra, and there's one other thing that we did in here that I'm not going to show you today because I guess given the limited time, and that is this bit here where we pop up the input parameters for each of the services and what difference they're going to make, and maybe giving a discount. But what I'll do at the end is give you a link to an online tutorial which shows exactly how to do that, and many more things as well. So that, I mean, that's it. So we've gone from a spreadsheet that that I found online, did an internal ROI calculator for a campaign. We've added in bits into the spreadsheet, or I added in bits into the spreadsheet to update it to be able to take account of what the difference the MyMark services was going to make, and that ended up in a spreadsheet that looked a bit like this, which, as I say, is probably very similar to spreadsheets that you have around your organization today. And then we just sat on top of this and did all the great stuff that that Squirrel can do. And having done that, if we come out, I published this earlier, and if we go to our project manager, we can see that because I showed it to you earlier in the web. So this one here, so just like the previous one, we could share that in PowerPoint. We can copy a web link. So this web link here will allow anyone to view it, or I can get the embed code here that allows me to put it into my website. So incredibly flexible in terms of distribution and getting it out to people, but it's engaging. It's hiding the detail that you don't want to be people distracted with. It just gives them exactly what it is that they need in order to understand the value of your product. So I said we look at some real world examples, and there are three that we're going to, well, actually four. There's one other, and I see Bill Strauss from Future Metrics is on the call today. Bill has many great Squirrel projects here that articulates not so much saying this is the value that he can add directly to a business, but he's explaining the intricacies of replacing coal with biomass fuel, and these are great. So, for example, if I click on this one, then I come in, and so you can come in. There's so much you can do in here. So I can talk about if you've got a wood pellet factory, what are the parameters on that, and you can take that and sort of move it around so that you start to. There we go. So we're sort of what's the size of the factory? Maybe down here, what's the price and how it changes the charts. As I say, because it sort of animates in real time, it draws people in. But there's so much that you can do in here. There's a bit of explanation that you can see when you click on the help icons. You can change all of these numbers, and sort of links out to the Future Metrics website, the ability to print it, fully functional. And all of this was done in exactly the same spirit as the one you've just seen, using a spreadsheet and Squirrel point and click on top of it. The second one, so that was one where you click on a link and it goes out to a separate window. This is one that Prospero use, Prospero e-commerce consultancy, that allows you to, this is embedded. So this gray bit in here is a Squirrel project. You wouldn't know it, it's just embedded in the website. But again, all of the capabilities that we've seen before, the ability to move the sliders and see what's going on when we do different sort of things, maybe the ability to reset it or put it to a particular benchmark. And the final one is our partner Infosol in the US have a product called InfoBurst, which is and this allows people to understand the value they're going to get. It helps you take advantage of a business objects Tableau or Power BI implementation, and you can do things like, well, if I've got what are my parameters in terms of the numbers of reports that I've got, how many views and things I'm going to get on that. And so there's just a lot of detail explains in the details underneath here if you want to do that, or you can print it out as a PDF. So again, and the interesting thing about each of these is they look dramatically different. So you're not bound by Squirrel to a particular look and feel. The one that I did is different from these three. You can really make it your own, make it if it's on your website, make it a part of your website that looks like all the rest, or if you want to sort of adhere to your corporate branding or whatever it is, it's all possible within Squirrel. And there was no code written in any of these. They look like web apps. They look like they might need code, but they don't. It was all created using Squirrel 365 and spreadsheets. And that's even more remarkable when you look at this one here, which I've labeled the ultimate value calculator. The chap in the top right-hand corner is Ziv Barzili from Salesforce, and he has created just an amazing system. You'll see here he's got 3 to 4 to 5 different tabs on here. You input the drivers and then expenses, you adjust your benefits, and you look at how you're deploying the solution, then it gives you these ROI charts. There is so much in here. There's no real point in me going through it today. What I'm going to do in the next slide or two is give you a link to a half-hour webinar that we did with Ziv where he talks through this. But remember, everything you see in here was created, as the last slide said, with no code from a spreadsheet, nothing but a spreadsheet and Squirrel and point and click on top of it. So what to do next? Sign up for a free account. So the title here was Build an ROI Calculator. We've done that in 30 minutes. Well, we're at 30 minutes. We've done that, but for free. So you can sign up for a free account. The Squirrel free product allows you to do a project just like this, totally free of charge. So if you wanted to create one of these, add it to your website, all that would be possible with our free product. So sign up for account at squirrel365.io/getting started. The training that I talked about to be able to do the pop-up window and things like that, and so much more is available in our 3 half-hour series at info.squirrel365.io/getting started series. The event with Ziv is up at our events page, so squirrel365.io/events. And there's a lot more there. In fact, if I take it up to show you exactly where that is, so here's our events page. Yep, there's the one that Bill did with us. If you want to know more about Bill and his CO2 emissions work, that's there. Another value calculator is Jim Peduto there in the cleaning services industry. Oh yes, that's Ziv on there. The Salesforce use value calculators to get customers to understand ROI better. So I mean, just lots of great content in there if you want to go get that. Any other questions or follow-up you have, you're more than welcome to email me at donald@squirrel365.io. And of course, there are many more details on our website. Just gone 2 or 3 minutes over, so I think I will close it there. To see if you do have any questions, feel free to email me at this address here, and we can catch up afterwards. But other than that, I will leave you to the rest of your days. Thank you so much for joining. I hope it was valuable, and hopefully see you next time. Thank you very much.